What I like to do is this. I like to start with learning a little bit about what is going on in with your studies, what is going good, what is going bad, what you're having trouble with, and see what you want to get out of the session. Like if you said to me, Stu, hey, we'll have to make sure that we cover freehold estates, leasehold estates, stuff like that. I want to make sure that I cover all the things that you have on your hit list. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on?
Well, I have, as many people do, I have a complicated life. I have 5 kids at home that I'm trying to wrangle at the same time as trying to study, and 2 of them with special needs, so 2 autistic sons.
Wow.
Yeah, they take a lot of work. I'm 55, so I've been, 56. So I've been out of school for quite a while, and have not worked. I've been on medical leave of absence for over a year, so getting back into things and just really feel the pressure to get the test done so I can start making money for our family. I do have test anxiety, and as far as with the studying, it's like, so I just started I signed up for the prep agent courses. Also, I did the 1-month session trial and stuff. And so I'm just kind of going off of what they are saying to do. So I'm doing the vocabulary stuff first.
Yeah.
Like I've taken 12 of the vocabulary tests. I'm probably averaging like 79% on it. I get anywhere from, like, my first 4 tests were in my 60s. My 6th test to my 12th test were 80s to 90s and stuff. So I'm definitely I'm getting it, but I don't know, once it actually comes to the test, am I going to get it and remember it? But I have a hard time with math that I really, really, really struggle with. I was never good at it in school either. I actually kind of cheated the system and never did algebra, pre-algebra, nothing. I did business math is all that I ever took in high school, which was back in the 80s, because they didn't have requirements like they do now that you have to take 4 years of math. I just took 2 years of math. I took business math, which was, balance sheets and, balancing your checkbook and simple stuff like that. It was never algebra. So I really struggle with the math. I have watched some of the videos that you guys have done on it, but I could always use more tips on that. And then probably the biggest thing that I get confused on the terms is, I call them the French terms, I don't even know how to pronounce them, the laches, the less pendant, all those funky names and stuff. I really struggle with those quite a bit. And then basically just wanting to know, how I should be studying. So I took Rockwell, so I've got the cram session also. So I don't know if I should be alternating back and forth, like do one, of your guys's and then switch over and do a Rockwell and just keep going back and forth between the two. I don't know if I should be timing myself when I'm doing your guys's tests. Like, so they're only 100 questions, and it seems like on average I'm getting 100 questions done in about 25 minutes. So I don't know if I should go ahead.
So here's what I want to start with. A lot of things going on in your head.
Yep.
So,
that's me.
And listen, and I want you to understand, just based on me listening to you, I'm getting anxious just listening to your thought process. So I could see how. So I could see how you could have a lot of test anxiety, because I think that you're probably very, very, very smart, is doing what you do, just being where you are in life, I think that the intelligence is 1000% there, and here's the thing. Also, being astute enough that in high school, you're like, hey, look, math isn't my strong suit, so I'm going to go into different avenues. Yeah. I mean, and also being able to say now, I know I could do better in math. So what I'll tell you is this, you have a lot of different, and this is also too, just because, let's call a spade a spade. The test is brutal. Right. Brutal, nasty, evil test, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. So I wouldn't exist if you sat there and said, oh, this is such an easy test. Then what happens is, well, we wouldn't have 100 different avenues for you to go down that you could possibly, study for the test. So when you sit there and say, hey, I'm confused as to what I should be doing, I could definitely see, understand, and get how that could be an issue or a concern, So what I'll tell you is this. You really want to come up with a study plan. A lot of people don't do that. I think that a study plan is extremely important. So how long are you studying for when you do sit down to study?
Well, because of the kids, I get interrupted a lot, but I literally can devote, I don't do anything other than study and take care of my kids. So I could study for 8 hours a day. I could make it a full-time job, but I do get interruptions because of the kids. So could I do 2 hours consistently? If I come to our RV, I've got a trailer. I could lock the door and say, leave me alone for 2 hours unless the house is burning down, and then take a break after 2 hours. But I literally could spend 8 to 10 hours easily a day studying. I have that available to me.
Okay. So listen to what I'm going to tell you. Number one, don't want you studying 8 to 10 hours a day. Okay. I don't want you doing that. So what I say is one study session. This is kind of like my rule of thumb. Okay. One study session should be no longer than a good movie.
Okay.
Okay. Should be no longer than a good movie. Because if you start sitting there saying, oh, I did a 5-hour study session with breaks, oh, dear God, no. don't, that is not a recipe for success. You're not setting yourself up to be successful that way. And people think that they are. And that's the whole thing. Like, people are like, oh, I'm going to study more. I'm going to shove more knowledge in my brain. But I'm going to tell you something, and let you know a little secret. Truth of the matter is, if you actually spent about an hour every day going over material, and here's the thing, that hour doesn't have to be an hour straight. I mean, you could try to find 20 minutes, 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I actually prefer shorter study sessions myself. I have ADHD, and I'm basically like, I'm the kind of, like, if you ever watched Finding Nemo, I'm Dory. I will have the attention span of like 30 seconds, and then I will jump onto something else, and then I will jump onto something else. And or what I'll do is I'll be sitting at my desk, and I'll be like, oh, I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to call this person back. I have to call this person back. And then all of a sudden my wife comes in and goes, oh, look at this new thing that I bought on Amazon. I'm like, ooh. And literally, I'm going down that other path. So that's why I say I like short little study sessions, and I like a focus on vocab and understanding the vocabulary. So I like seeing the vocab questions and everything. That's probably my favorite topic. What I think you will get the most benefit from, okay, is vocabulary. Okay? I think that vocabulary is probably the best outlet for anyone. And I also think that what you should be doing is you should be working on, and if you're new to Prep Agent and you see any of our webinars and everything, I think those are really good things to do, is to jump onto Prep Agent and do the webinars, do the live webinars, and also go back and watch a recap of them. So once you're a member, what happens is this. I'll actually show you. In the Prep Agent webinar section, you can go right here and you can watch a replay of any of the webinars that have already been done, like ones that I've done, ones that other people have done. This is the upcoming schedule, so you could go on live, or you could watch it. It'll be available for replay once it's done and complete. So that is something.
That on the webinars right there. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Yep, webinars. So you just click right on webinars, and you'll see, like I said, you'll see a lot of different topics, and those are great. But what I tell all of my students too, because like if you wanted to search a topic, let's say you wanted, let's say finance, or let's say math. Let's say you were math was a problem, okay? Look at all these math ones. You could watch me do math, Joe do math. You could do all these different math ones, okay? So these are all the math formulas and equations, you know, math percentages, all that kind of stuff. So that's, and also let's say fair housing. You don't have any past ones on fair housing. Let's just do disclosures. Okay, you have practices and disclosures with a whole bunch of different people. You know, you have Joe, you have Adrian. Okay, these are all Joe ones that he's done. Okay, Joe, and then you see me come into the fray up there. So yeah, and you see like a bunch of different ones up there. So what I would do is this: I would recommend that you kind of dive in, because a lot of things that you're going to do are going to be based on, you know, just getting a better understanding of what the words are. So that's why, like, you say, hey, I don't understand what list pendants is and some of the, you know, foreign words. But here's the thing: once you know it, okay, once you know it, then you know it. Like, you can't take it out of your brain, you know. So that's why what I usually tell people to do is, and you'll see Joe will say this on his webinars especially, learn 5 words a day. Explain them to yourself. Say them out loud. What I do is I would write down on a piece of paper the night before what words are you want to study for the next day, and then I would focus on that, okay? I would focus on that. So that's what I would personally be doing in regards to your studies. And then again, cut it down to a certain amount of time. And the practice questions and the practice exams, I don't think I'd necessarily, so here's the goal of the practice exams, and you have to understand this. The goal of the practice exams is to show you the words that you're studying in a real world scenario in regards to what you would see on the test. Okay. So picture this, it's kind of like 2 different things. The vocabulary that you do and learning the vocab is lifting the weights at the gym and doing all the exercises at the gym. And then what happens is the practice exam, that's running the marathon. That's saying, okay, what could you do? Put all this stuff that we've worked on and we've practiced into real world scenarios. So that's why it's not good, and you will not be successful if you just do practice exams. Okay. Also, you'll never be able to see where your gaps are if you just do vocabulary. Okay. So vocabulary is very good, and you could pass the test just with that. Like I said, it's something that if you just worked in the gym and you did the right things, you could run a marathon, but you'll never know. You'll never know where you are, where your gaps are, if there's any kind of gap in understanding. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So I don't have the way that I signed up for, I don't have access to the vocabulary worksheets. So is that something I should upgrade then to get the vocabulary worksheets?
Totally up to you if you want to do that. I always recommend, listen, I recommend all, like, here's the thing. Again, I always recommend all the products, but I also understand too that it might not be something that is feasible for, you know, for everyone to purchase and to pay for, you know. Like, you know, there's so many things that you could buy in the realm of real estate exam prep that it's hard to say, oh yeah, use this, oh yeah, use that. Again, the only program I endorse in my 12 years of teaching has been Prep Agent. So that's why I highly recommend it. And I do suggest that, you know, if it is in the budget, that you definitely check the box and go, yeah, full Monty with Prep Agent, you know, in regards to that. And again, if it is in the budget, you know, because the vocab worksheet is fantastic. You literally could click there, go, my definition, and you could put your own definition in there as well as the Prep Agent definition. So I really like stuff like that, you know, that you could, you know, increase your knowledge base of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right. Now, let's do this, because you said, and here's what I could do. Now, I'm going to let you decide on this one. We can go into math. Math is an area where we can focus on. If you'd like to focus on math, let me no, because again, what I could do is we could go right into math and, you know, kind of make that, see what we could do in there, see how, if we can improve anything. So is that something you want to try?
Possibly. I don't know what else you had in mind. Math just makes me nervous.
So here's what I'm going to tell you with math. And this is why I always ask people. It's one of those things that it's either going to be something that you say, because you have a foundational knowledge base for math. You have just something that you're working off of in regards to, okay, this is this is how I'm going to approach this problem. And you and I could do a million questions. And then on the 1,000,001st question, you will go back into your evil ways with math. Like, it's just that I do not have enough time to rejigger 12 plus years of, you know, math knowledge. Impossible, you know? So what I say is this: I always approach the math as I try to be additive, and I try to add on to your knowledge and kind of show you different tools that you could use to help you answer the questions.
Okay.
So again, if you want to try that, we can do a couple. So what I would say is this: we could go to the half-hour mark and do math questions, right? So we'll spend 12, 15 minutes on math questions. Then we could jump into some other areas. How's that sound?
Yep, that'd be good.
All right, perfect. So let's spend some time in math. Now, what I'm going to want you to do is, when we get a math question up on the screen, okay, really the goal that I want you to have is I want you to answer the question as you see it, okay? So what I want you to do is just tell me, the very first thing we're going to do is identify what the question is asking us. Because if we don't identify what the question is asking us, impossible for us to answer the question. So with every single math question, okay, what I need you to do is I need you to make sure that you are answering every question in a step-by-step format. So I'm just going to go see what my first one's going to be. All right, we're going to do this one as the first one. So again, read the question, and what I need you to do is tell me what it is they're asking you. What are they asking you for? So go ahead and read this one.
Read out loud?
Up to you.
Oh, okay.
Whatever feels comfortable for you. Yeah.
They're asking me what he needs to pay in his taxes based off of what the price was that he paid for it.
So, okay, so what is the answer to this question? What would you do first?
Well, I know the $220,000 doesn't have anything to do with it because that was the list price. It's not what he paid for it.
Sure. So we're saying the 220,000 gone.
Yep.
Okay, what else?
And you're going to, the 10,000 doesn't come into play because the income tax is based off of what he paid for it. It doesn't have anything to do with his down payment.
So what are they asking? So let me ask you this: what are they asking for?
They want to know
what are they asking in this question?
They want to know what he paid for the property, so it's 180,000.
Bingo. So here's what I'm going to tell you. You ready? This is I always use this as the first problem, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay. Typically, as soon as people see numbers, okay, as the answers, they typically seize up and they start going, "Oh my God, I have to do math." So understand that just because you see numbers and it's a long question doesn't mean that it's a difficult question or that you necessarily have to do math. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally it does. And that is what I did. I went, okay, do I multiply or divide? Because I saw more than 3 numbers. So that's what first thing was going to, what's the formula that I need?
Right. So what I'm going to say to you is this. The very first thing that you always want to do is this. You always want to basically make sure that you're identifying what are they asking you.
Okay.
Because you see how I kept saying to you, so what are they asking? So what are they asking? Because you kept knocking out things. You're like, okay, this is this. And I don't need this. I don't need that. And I was like, all right, what are they asking you?
Yeah.
And you knew exactly what it is. You actually said it at the beginning. You said it at the very beginning, and you were just kind of still going through the question. And you see, if you just went to, what are they asking me? Then you would have had a really solid, like you would have answered the question a little quicker, but I'm glad that you finally got to it. Pat's cost basis for the income tax purposes would be $180,000. Boom. So that was easy.
Okay.
I will tell you, you do have to do math for the other questions. So that's the only gift. That's the only gift. This one's a great question because this one has a lot of has not a lot of moving parts, but there's many ways you could get to the answer, and none of them are wrong. So I want to just see how you would tackle this question. So take a look and tell me what you're thinking of.
So you're going to take the 17,200 and you're going to multiply it by 9%.
Why? Because what are they asking you for? Like, let me ask you that question again. What is it that they're asking you for?
I need to find out what, not multiply because it's subtract. I need to find out what 9% of 17,200 is.
Why? Because what again, I'm asking you a question. What are they asking you? Like you're listen to very simple. Identify what they're asking.
I need to find out what the cost of the home was.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Is that 9% of 17,200?
I don't know. I mean, they're putting it there, so I assume it is, but I don't know. They're saying it represents it. So represents doesn't mean it actually is.
So listen to what I'm going to tell you. Let's read the question and identify what it is that they're asking. Okay?
Okay.
Jones sold his home for $17,200. If this represents 9% more than what he paid for the cost of the home, that would most nearly be.
Yeah,
so we're looking for what he originally paid for the home, correct?
Right, right.
So 17,200 is representative of a 9% increase off of what he paid for it. Does that make sense?
Right. So it's going to be, so they're not asking for an exact answer. So do you round up or round down? Because it's like in between the 15.5 and the 15.8.
Well, what arithmetic did you do to come up with the answer? Because it's going to be clearly one of them.
Oh, okay. I just subtracted the 9% from 17.2.
So here's what happens. Let's look at the math that was actually done here, and I'll show you, okay? So what happened was we started with a number, one of these. Then what we did was, in this whole entire story, we added 9%.
Oh, okay.
So 17,200 is representative of basically 109% of one of these numbers. Do you see? Because if I tell you, watch this, you ready? If I tell you that tomorrow I want to have a, whatchamacallit, a 9% more than what I have now, okay? I want to have 9% more than what I have now. Wouldn't I at least have what I started with?
Correct.
Okay, so what happens is this. The two ways you could do this, and I'll show you the two ways that you can come up with this arithmetic, okay, is you could multiply 9%. You could find out what 9% of each of these numbers is, okay? And then add it to it, right? So you could add 9%. Just straight up add 9% and figure out which one is going to yield you 17,200. Alternatively, you could use the Pabst Blue Ribbon or the part over the base times the rate. This is the T-bar that most schools teach, okay? So have you seen that before, the part over the base times the rate?
I actually have not. No, not in what I've been looking at so far.
Okay, so let me do you this favor. Let me teach this to you because I think that it will help you, okay? So everyone always tries to figure out what happens when I'm using a rate. And this is usually used for rate questions, okay? And what I refer to it is, I remember it by Pabst Blue Ribbon, okay? That's how I always remember it.
It's funny, I used to sell beer. That's what I used to do.
Well, then you're going to really like this one. It's going to be easy for you to remember. So here's what it is. You ready? Whenever, and you see how I make a little division sign above each one. So that little fraction is a division sign. Now, what I'm going to tell you is this. Whatever you're trying to solve for, you cross that out, and the remaining thing that you have is the formula you have to do, okay? So the hardest part about it is putting everything into the right place and identifying it properly. So what happens is if it's a commission problem, and I'm just going to give you a simple one, I sell a home for $100,000, okay? My commission is 6%. How would you figure out how much money I made?
I would take the 100,000 times 6%.
Okay, let me show you what that is. That is a base times a rate problem. The rate is usually the percentage, and the base is usually the largest number, typically. As long as, listen to what I'm going to tell you. There's like a little trick here. As long as the rate is less than 100%, as long as the rate is less than 100%, then what happens is the base is always smaller than the part, okay? Because listen, I'm going to show you, because you're the type of person that you probably understand very practical math. So I'm going to show you some things. You ready? Let's say I have a pizza pie, right? And we'll consider that to be the base. What happens is if the rate is under 100%, and the rate is the percentage of the pizza pie we take, okay? If the rate is under 100%, then the part is always going to be smaller, okay? The part is always going to be smaller. But if the slice that I take is greater than 100%, then the part's going to be bigger, right? Because then my slice is bigger than the whole pie. Right. Like it's impossible, but possible at the same time. So listen to what I'm going to tell you. I just told you in this equation that 109% of one of these numbers equals 17,200. So here's what we know. You ready? We know the rate.
It's 9. And
we actually know the part because it's 109%. And we know that the part is bigger because it's more than 100%.
Right.
So all you would do is divide the part, 17,200, okay? You would divide the part, okay, by the rate. So once you do that, once you divide 17,200 divided by 1.09, it would give you 15,779. That would be closest to 15,800. So let me ask you that. Does that help you out at all with the math and the struggles that you might have been having?
A little bit. It's going to take me a little bit to grasp that whole concept, because that is what I have a hard time with, is figuring out what numbers to plug where and being able to read it and stuff. So like when I first saw the formula, I definitely knew that the rate was the 9%. But I was struggling with, I thought that the base was a 17,200, so that meant I needed to find out the part. I did know that. but it was, okay, but the way you just explained it now, we have the part and the rate. So that's where I kind of got confused.
And here's the thing. That's why profit questions are always confusing, and I like to go over one because they're seemingly simple, but at the same token, it's hard because some people have trouble getting to the fact that it's 109%, right? It's representative of 109% of it. So what people typically do, and it's not wrong, is they typically add 9% to each of the answers and come up with what's going to yield them 17,200.
So it's funny, that's what I was going to ask you, but that'll take forever. That's wasting time on the test.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. You're very concerned with time. Don't you worry about time.
Oh, okay.
Don't you worry about time. Because here's why. Number one, if you do all the things I tell you to do, you're going to not need to worry about the time. Also, worrying about the time is just more time that you're spending on things that you don't need to spend it on.
Right.
Shove it out of your brain.
Okay.
Like, you don't even need to think an iota about that, because if you do all the right things, time will not be a factor. Okay. Another thing that I recommend, highly recommend, okay, now that we're talking about timing and stuff like that, since that seems to be like an overarching theme with you, that seems to be something that you might have problems with. Test anxiety. What I'm going to tell you is this. Go onto YouTube and watch some, like, I would say if you spend 10 minutes a day going over different test anxiety tips, things that you could do to alleviate the stress, and I'll tell you like a couple of them. On your way to the test, don't listen to YouTube videos. Don't try to study. Don't try to quiz yourself. Don't do anything, okay? Stop what you're doing in regards to the anxiety that you might have with the test, okay? Stop with that. You don't want to build up. You don't want to get into the testing center building up to like, oh my God, it could be this. Oh my God, this, that, and the other. Oh my God, I don't know this. Maybe I don't know that either. Just don't worry about it. You want to go in, listen to stand-up comedy, listen to music. You want to be in a really good, happy mood, okay? Because that's going to help you clear your mind for the test. That's going to help you get success for the test. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing I want you to do when you're at the test, a lot of people don't do this. While you're taking the test, smile.
Yeah.
Smile while you're taking the test, because you cannot stress, you cannot tense up when you're smiling, okay? Yeah. Your genuine, wholehearted smile, you cannot tense up. Okay. So relax yourself, okay? Now, so we're going to go do another math question. We're going to shove one more in, and then we're going to go to other topics, okay? So I'm going to do one that I like, this one, because you're going to probably see a question similar to this, and there's going to be some tips and tricks that I could use in here that will help you in other tests, in other questions. So why don't you take a look at this one?
Okay. So I'm needing to find out how much he's going to be paying in taxes on $49,750. So I need to figure out how many 55-cent parts there are in the $49,750.
Okay, so it's 55 cents per 500. So do you need to figure out how many 55 cents there are?
No,
or something
how many 55 cents? How many 55 cents part? So how many 500? Sorry, how many $500 parts there are in the 49,750?
Bingo. There you go. And then what would you do? So once you find that out, we don't even need to do the math on that, because I really just want you to find. I want you to do well with how you get there. So whenever you say 55 cents per 500, the 500, if you divide it into this, and then whatever answer it yields you, you're going to multiply that by 0.55.
Yep.
And here's what I'm going to tell you, okay? You might not feel like your math is very strong, but actually the math that you studied when you were in school it probably is going to do you better than any other math that you could possibly have done, because where you immediately went to, yep, it's per 500, so I have to figure out how many 500s are in there. Like, you understood that. And there's a lot of students that don't get that.
Oh, okay.
So you might not feel confident with the math, but what I want to tell you is this. I feel comfortable with letting you loose in math because it's, again, I think that a lot of the business acumen that you have is actually going to do you better than a lot of other students who might not have that kind of background. So you actually probably have a leg up when it comes to math, and you might not even think that. So
Okay.
let's look at the next stuff. So let's go into just the national exam. And what I want to do is this. So the reason I do a national exam is I want to see how you're answering questions, okay? I want to see how you're approaching the questions. I want to see your thought process through each one of these questions. And what we'll do is this. If it's a question that I feel that you're doing really well on, we really don't need to go too much into, I'll just kind of breeze through it. I'll say, yep, check, awesome, thank you, let's keep going.
Okay.
If it's something that I think that there's some knowledge gaps, I will tell you, hey, you know, I have, let's go over this. Let's talk about why that was the answer, okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead, take your time on the questions, ask anything that you'd like, because this is, again, for you to learn, but I want you to, what we're going to do is we're going to see how you're answering these questions and see if we could improve and help you through your anxiety and the stress of the test. So let's take a look at the first one.
Well, Johnson's the listing broker.
Okay.
So I don't know. And Donna, you know, got it accepted, but it doesn't mean, you know, I don't know. She says she's a salesperson, so I don't know what role she had to do in it. So Johnson's the listing broker, so I would think Johnson would get it.
Okay. You say Johnson? Yeah, there you go. It would go to Johnson. You worked that out perfectly.
Okay.
So let's keep going.
Well, I know it's not, well, I shouldn't say I know. Alienation doesn't seem like it would be right because you're alienating yourself from something. You're merging something together here, so that doesn't seem right on that. Proration doesn't seem right, so it's either consideration or prescription. Transferring the title of real property to another. I would say it's prescription.
Alienation. So here's, listen to the wording on alienation, and let's talk about this for a second. So when you alienate title, okay, when you alienate someone, you're kind of leaving them alone. You're saying, here, you know, that's it. I have nothing to do with you. When you transfer title to the property, you're alienating title.
Okay, that makes sense.
You're saying, yeah, you're alienating title. Now, they'll also refer to alienation two ways, voluntary and involuntary.
Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll break it down two different ways. And I'll give you some examples of voluntary because I want you to get familiar with, because if you're not unfamiliar with the word alienation, I want you to get familiar with how they could use it at the test. So voluntary alienation would be sale, devising it. Devise means to will. So if I will something, even though I'm dead, I'm voluntarily choosing who gets it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm choosing who's going to be the next one to get it. Now, involuntary alienation would be that of eminent domain, adverse possession. So prescription, what prescription means is that usually has to do with either a prescriptive easement, okay, or a adverse possession. So what happens is when you obtain title via prescription, that means that you have met a prescriptive period of time of open and hostile use to get either a prescriptive easement or adverse possession. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was kind of on the right track with the alienation. I think I said, you know, separating it from, well, you're separating it from the original owner to somebody else. So I guess I should have stayed with that.
You were on the right track, but I think what happens is kind of just like when I just showed you the part over the base times the rate. Like,
Right.
it's just something that you weren't introduced to in the proper way. So what happens is that's why we have to kind of rejigger it and say, no, you were on the right path. And also too, you know, trust your instincts with with a lot of the questions. Go with listen. Again, I started this session saying, I think you're a really smart person. I think there's a lot more smarts in there than you even give your credit for, you know? So what happens is this. I think that you're at a point where you have to build up your confidence, you know? And then that will help you, because that will also help you with the timing too. So let's look at the next one.
Well, I think it's still in a state for years because it's got an end timeline on it.
So you're thinking a state for years?
Yeah, the only thing it doesn't tell me though is how long the son-in-law is going to have it for. So I get, you know, and so that's where the sufferance one comes in. So I don't know. But state for years pops out just because of the grandson's, you know, it's passing on at the time of death.
So which one you want to go with?
I'm just going to go with the state for years.
Okay. So it is going to probably be remainder, I believe. And that is the correct one. So listen to what happens. So what is an estate for years? Let me ask you that.
It's it's got a timeline on it. It's like if someone dies or a certain amount of years or whatever.
So let me ask you this. Is it ownership?
I don't know. I think it is, yes.
Okay. So let's clarify that, because I'm going to go into one of my little boards. Just bear with me one second, and I will show you something that might help you out, okay? So here's our freehold estate. These are all of our ownership rights in all the different ways we could own real estate. We could own real estate fee simple or fee simple absolute, fee defeasible, a life estate. So in this scenario, in this question, it said a grandfather grants a life estate to his grandson and stipulates that on the grandson's death, the title will pass to the son-in-law. So basically what they did was this. They have a life estate. So what is a life estate? Let me ask you that.
It's for the life of the person.
Okay, so it's ownership based on the life of the person. So, okay, so the grandson, and then said over here somewhere, there's the son-in-law. Okay. So the grandfather gives the grandson a life estate. Okay. And with that life estate, they said that upon death, the interest will go to the son-in-law. So they were asking about what is the son-in-law's interest in this. Okay. So what happens is, first thing is this. Any time that there's a life estate, it does one of two things. It either reverts to the original owner. So upon death, it would revert to the original owner. And that's an interest in reversion. So what happens is the grandfather has a reversionary interest in the property.
Okay.
If upon death, it goes to someone else, like in this scenario where it goes to the son-in-law, then what happens is they have a remainder man interest, because what happens is this is ownership. So the freehold estates have the full bundle of rights, okay? Everything in it. Now, let me show you what an estate for years is. Those are our leasehold or less than freehold estates. So those are any type of lease that we would have. So an estate for years, you were right in saying that it has a definitive amount of time, right? It has a finite amount of time. But what happens is that would be like a rental for 1 week, 1 year, 1 month, a weekend. Those are all estate for years, and those are all leasehold estates. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does.
So what happens is whenever we're talking about a freehold estate, we're talking about ownership.
Okay.
When we're talking about a life estate, we're talking about ownership based on the life of someone or something. So that's why in this one, both an estate for years and an estate at sufferance wouldn't make sense, because let me ask you this, what is an estate at sufferance? Since we went over an estate for years, what's an estate at sufferance?
Well, how I remember it basically is like, it's, and this is just my wording on it. It's like somebody gets it just because they've been using it for so long. It's just like, so sorry, you don't get to have it. I've been here, so I get it.
That is, so here's what you're thinking of, and this is, and let's kind of clarify it. You're thinking of more of like an adverse possession where they actually take ownership. Okay. So an estate at sufferance is when a lease terminates and the tenant stays there without the landlord's permission. So the landlord's like, I don't really want you staying here anymore. You have to go. And the tenant's like, yeah, I'm not going. That's an estate at sufferance. And how I remember it is the landlord suffering.
Yeah.
So that's one of the leasehold estates. And what you were referring to where they stay there and they've met a prescriptive period. So it's kind of like rolling the last question into it. They've met a prescriptive period. They could file for adverse possession. And I mean, that period is a long time. It's depending on the state. It's upwards of 30 years for adverse possession. So yeah, let's take a look. So did that help you out at all with this question?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Let's go to the next one.
A stream.
Okay, stream. Okay. Yep. So what would our littoral rights be? What would our littoral rights be to?
To the land that comes up to the river? I guess I don't really know what you're asking.
So there's two types of bodies of water, rights that we have when we have bodies of water. Right. We have that of riparian rights. Right. And we also have littoral rights.
Which is the lakes, the oceans.
Yep. So that would be a lake and an ocean would both be examples of littoral rights. Mm-hmm. So that would be the example there. Riparian is our rivers and streams and navigable waterways. So let's take a look. Perfect. So you knew that. Next one.
Well, it's kind of two of them. It's kind of the first one and the third one. I've never seen it described as a chronological success. I've never seen it worded that way. I've just seen it say a list of all parties who've ever owned it. So I'm going to go with the first one.
So here's what I'm going to say.
It's more descriptive, though, in the third one.
The third one is more descriptive, yeah. So what happens is a list of all parties who have ever owned real estate. It's more a chronological. So here's the thing. There's a couple of vagaries in this. So it's a list of all parties who have ever owned real estate. It's not talking about a specific parcel of real estate, right? So what happens is this one where it says a chronology of successive owners of record of a parcel of real estate is much more descriptive to what it is. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. something that you want to be cognizant of and aware of when you're doing your vocabulary is really hard coupling words together, where you're like, I've seen it listed, I've seen it as a list, but I've never seen it as the way it's described in C, so I'm going to go with A. What happens is that could lead you down a path of despair really quickly. So here's what I usually do. When I learn my vocab, I picture that my best friend is having coffee with me. And this is how I do it in my head. This is how I tell all my students to do it, is I picture my best friend's having coffee with me, okay? And what happens is this. They're saying to me, hey, I just went over the chain of title chapter, so can you go over and tell me what chain of title is? And then I would say, sure, that is a list of all the owners to one particular parcel of real estate. So let's say chain of title to your home. It's going to show a list of everyone that's owned it, the entire chain, okay? So that is a chain of title. You have a nice, simple, easy, what I refer to as coffee-worthy definition of what that word is, if that makes sense.
Yep.
All right, so let's go to the next one.
The apparent tenement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Servient tenement. So what does the word appurtenant mean? Let me ask you that.
Goes with the land.
Goes with the land. Okay. So here's what happens. We have a situation that says a property's owner neighbor uses her driveway to reach their garage that is on their property. Her attorney explains that the neighbors have an easement appurtenant. So an easement exists that gives them the right to use her driveway. Her property is known as, so whenever we're referring to the actual properties that are involved in an easement, the two terms that we're going to use are servient tenement and dominant tenement.
Yep,
Servient tenement serves the easement. Dominant tenement benefits.
Yep. Totally makes sense.
So, and here's what I'm going to tell you. Best thing to do, slow down the question, okay? Because I think that what happens is you have it. Here's the thing. It would be a shame for you to fail the exam because the test just outdid you.
Right.
Because here's the thing. If you're spending so much time on the knowledge, just to sit there and get a question wrong that you know the right answer to, that's a bummer. Like, yeah, you laugh because you understand that stinks. That stinks to put all that effort in and then to not do it. So let me do something for you. Let me read to you the question at the speed at which I read it, my Northeast kind of New Yorker speed, okay, which is probably the speed at which you're reading the questions to yourself, okay? It would read like this. A property owner's neighbor uses her driveway to reach their garage, which is on their property. Her attorney explains that the neighbors have an easement appurtenant that gives them the right to use her driveway. Her property is the. Now, hard stop there. Let me read it to you at the tempo I want you to start adopting as your tempo. A property owner's neighbors use her driveway to reach their garage, which is on their property. Her attorney explains that the neighbors have an easement appurtenant that gives them the right to use her driveway. Her property is the, and here's why, here's what the tempo is. You're reading a book to a child.
Yep.
You're reading a book, the cow jumped over the moon. You are reading a book to a child. That is the tempo you want to internalize. Anything faster than that leads you down a hole, leads you down a real quick rabbit hole, okay? Anything slower than that, too slow. You won't be able to understand it.
So
reading a book to a child.
The first way that you read it was actually slower than how I read it. I read it like twice as fast as what you did. So I definitely need to slow
guess what?
down.
Guess what? You're, because here's the thing. If you sit here and if you say to me, listen, because one of the things that you said just now was, I just read this. I know it. So here's the thing. If you're at a point where you've read this, you've known it, you think you've internalized it, and then you get the question wrong, you're going too fast.
Right. Yep.
Too fast. Next one.
Statute of Frauds.
Statute of Frauds. What's the statute of limitations?
I don't know. To me, I would
So
think
statute
it's
of lim-
what you can and can't do.
So what statute stands for is the law, and statute of frauds basically dictates when things need to be in writing and not in order to prevent fraud. Statute of limitations has to do with the time in which you have to file or place a complaint or something like that. Like you can't, 30 years after a crime has been committed, due to the statute of limitations, you cannot just go to the police department and say, hey, a crime was committed, because it has exceeded the statute of limitations. So the statute of fraud would be for writing. So let's keep going.
Buyer's interest in real property acquired at the moment of the seller and the buyer interest. Boy.
So knock one out.
I guess I would say fee simple determinable.
That's what you would say?
Yeah. Not confidently, but yeah. Nope, you did the wrong one.
I would say equitable title. So
Really?
listen to this. You ready? Yeah. So listen to this, okay? Legal title is title to the property. So
Right.
you know that obviously that hasn't passed yet because the deed hasn't been signed. That's what transfers legal title. So you don't have legal title as a buyer in this situation. Fee simple determinable, I guess you could refer to that as fee determinable, but it's not really a thing. Fee simple determinable is not really a thing. However, if I had to call it fee determinable, that would be ownership with conditions, right? Because again, going back to our freehold estates, what I would say to you is a really good thing for you to probably focus on would be freehold and less than freehold estates, and get a coffee-worthy definition in your head, like of what those items are, because I think that you have them a little jumbled up. So what I want you to do is I want you to start saying what these are and get a definition out there. So that's what we're going to kind of wrap up with. So tell me in your head what fee simple absolute is. Actually, you know what? No, scratch that. Tell me what a freehold estate is. So here, those are our three freehold estates. What's a freehold estate?
It is where there's no, it's simple, straightforward. There's no questioning anything. It's everything's lined up. Everything's done.
So here's what it is. I'm going to give you a different definition. You ready?
Yep.
It's ownership, period.
Okay.
End of story. Freehold estates are ownership. You have the full bundle of rights. You have the right to possess, use, transfer, exclude, and encumber. You have the full bundle of rights.
Okay.
Done. And it is simple. It is straightforward. In essence, it is. Okay. So, what is your definition for fee simple absolute?
There's conditions in it.
Okay. Let me change that up for you. You ready?
Yep.
Fee simple or fee absolute is when I tell you something is absolute, I'm meaning that that's the highest. That is, you can't get much better than that. Okay. When I say to you, are you clear on that one? Absolutely crystal clear. When we say fee simple, fee absolute, highest form of ownership, the only limitations on that ownership, because here's the thing, you ready? We're going to start each one of these out with its ownership, okay? Because again, I just told you, freehold estates are ownership, right? So every one of these is ownership, but then there's like a comma and something we need to fill in. So fee simple, fee absolute is ownership, but the only limitations to it are that of the government powers, right? The power to police powers, eminent domain, escheat, taxation. Like those are the only things that limit your ownership. Now, fee defeasible. What is that?
That is when it can be transferred to something, or it's got conditions to it, so obligations that you need to fill.
Okay, so that was a much better definition. Remember I said that we're going to start with its ownership. So here's what it is. Fee defeasible is ownership with conditions. What are some of the conditions of the ownership could be? Well, let me give you an example. Like, you can never sell alcohol here. Fee defeasible is I can never sell alcohol on this property. If I do, my ownership ceases to exist.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, what is a life estate?
It's ownership until you die.
Okay, that was a fantastic one. Didn't you see? And let me ask you this. Do you see how much easier it is when you actually just say, okay, I'm going to make a short, simple, concise thing in my head?
Yep.
Right? And that's why what I want you to do is I just kind of, every single one of your definitions, I want you to repeat. So let me clean up that definition a little bit. A life estate is ownership based on someone or something. So one of the things that you told me at the beginning was, Stu, the French and the Latin get me confused. So what happens is a life estate pour autre vie is based on the life of another. It's actually French for another's life. So let's say I own several condominiums, okay? And one of them I give to my grandparents' caretaker, and I say, okay, caretaker, you can live here for as long as you're alive. You own this. I'm giving you a life estate for as long as you live. So they have ownership. Ownership means they could sell it, they could transfer it, they could exclude it, they can encumber it, they could do whatever they want. However, their ownership will cease to exist upon their death. They have a straight up life estate. It's based on their life. If I said to the caretaker, you have that condominium for as long as both of my grandparents are alive, then she has a life estate based on the life of my grandparents. She has a life estate pour autre vie, so she could sell it, encumber it, do all that things. Also, she could devise it, because since it's not based on her life, if she were to die, her interest could transfer to someone else because it's based on the life of my grandparents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is, and here's the thing, when you're studying, that's what I want you to do. I want you to say these words out loud, because then when you're getting into, remember I told you, I said vocab is going to the gym, and then the marathon is the practice test.
Yep.
So what happens is this. You wouldn't have picked fee simple determinable, because you would have been like, that's not what we have here, right? Because the person doesn't have ownership. And if we know that anything with fee is ownership, then we know it can't be that, because they don't have ownership yet. So it can't be legal title. It can't be the fee simple determinable. And then they don't have an option to purchase, because what happens is it seems like they've entered into an agreement. It seems like we have a valid contract here. So what they have is what we would refer to as equitable title, is basically the right to possess it and acquire legal title at another time. Okay. So let me ask you this. Do you have any other questions, anything that I haven't gone over that you want to make sure that I touch on?
No, other than I would like to probably sign up for another session with you. So awesome. Yeah, you could do that right through the website. I always say book me sooner rather than later. And what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to record this, put this on my YouTube channel. And what I always ask my students is I keep it private unless you would like me to, if you say to me, hey, I have no problem with you sharing this with other people, because I always like to allow people to see what the sessions are like and see if it's right for them. And also
be able to get something out of it. Like if this could help someone else, I always like putting it out there. So when I always ask for your permission to do so, otherwise it will be unlisted. So you tell me which one you would prefer. Either one's fine.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
All right, awesome. So you should get that probably within the next day or so. I'll email you the link out. And what will happen is this. I'll get everything out to you. And if you have other questions, you could reach out. And also, like I said, sign up for another lesson. I'd love to help you out, and we could go over different things and see where you are with your studies.
All right.
All right.
Good. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. You have a great day now, okay?
All right. Thank you, Stu. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.